Hello and welcome to Online Learning in a Hurry, guest episode number 14 with the chair-laden Martin Weller, who's come to visit us today all the way from the United Kingdom. Martin, how are you today?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, coping well.
Are you? You having a nice time? How's the dog?
Yeah, well, that's the good part. The dog is very keen on this whole shutdown business and getting long walks every day. So
Lots more Martin time.
yeah, that's right. But what's the downside?
Well, can you tell people a little bit about who you are and then give us your wisdom for today?
Okay, yeah. So I'm Martin Weller. I'm Professor of Educational Technology at the Open University, where I've been for 25 years. Celebrating my 25th year this year. I lead a team there called the OER Hub, and we look at research around OERs. Also, I developed the OU's first sort of online course back in '99, which had 15,000 students.
Actually, a MOOC.
Stick that in your MOOC, yeah. So doing that, and so I've been around sort of e-learning, and I blog quite a bit at edtechie.net. So that's me.
So, what are you going to tell us today? What do you got for us?
I thought I'd go through. So, working at the Open University, obviously we celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. We're a national distance education university, so we're kind of used to this operating online, also operating at a distance. And when the crisis hit, I thought I would start a weekly drop-in session where I would just kind of give some OU advice to other people in the sector who are trying to shift online and get used to operating at a distance. And I got some of my OU colleagues to drop in as well. So we just ran these, and they're sort of very informal. They're not the kind of official OU response. I think the OU's been getting lots of requests from different places. But like all big organisations, it takes a time for those different parts to kind of align and get in place. And when it is, it's very effective and efficient. But this was sort of more of a stopgap thing, kind of just helping people out. So I thought I'd talk about what they've done in those sessions, how they cropped up. So the first one was just general. We then talked about student support, assessment, and the one yesterday was the one yesterday was short-term versus long-term plans, priorities, care, those kind of things. So I thought I'd just go through some of the things that we've covered in those. And it ranges from quite deep stuff to actually quite small things. So sometimes we were discussing, like when you shift online, things like collaborative activities, group work that might take an afternoon in a face-to-face setting can take several weeks online. Things like, when you're trying to get people to do a bit of group work and you assign roles to them, like I'll be the project manager, I'll be the researcher. Like, you can do that just like in a couple of minutes face-to-face. But online, like you ask someone to do something, particularly in an asynchronous forum, they've gone away for a week, you're waiting for their response. So, the whole thing can spread out much more. I think people often get caught out by that and just try to really transfer the lovely workshop they had, that worked every time face-to-face or online, and it doesn't work. But also small things like we were talking about icebreaker activities, and someone was saying that they really don't like a lot of the icebreaker activities that people do online. So there's one where you give 3 facts about yourself, and one is an untruth, and the other 2 are true. And so actually that often puts people in a very tricky situation. This person saying that he deals with people who are ex-offenders, coming out of prison. You're suddenly asked to say things about yourself. So things that might work quite well face-to-face. You might be asking people to reveal something about themselves or about their setting or the location online that they might be comfortable with. So some of those things were quite interesting.
I had so many requests for icebreaker activities in my course this week. Like, it's been such a big deal for people.
Yeah,
I think interesting.
But what the icebreaker gets at is a kind of a bigger thing, which is when you're face to face. The way I put it is like the architecture, the campus does a lot of the work for you. So, like you go to lecture room X, 10 to 11, and you receive content there. You go to the library here to get these resources. You go to this room to have your collaborative tutorial. So all that's kind of structured for you. And when you go at a distance, all that structure is lost. And so a lot of the agency then and responsibility goes back to the learner to have to kind of construct that. Right. And the same with socialization. You have a cafe where people just bump into each other and know each other. Actually, you've got to make all of that stuff explicit in your course. So that's why people want icebreaker activities. But they're quite difficult to sort of manage and to get right. So what you're trying to do is, forcibly create some of that kind of interaction you get, and there's a good reason for that, because there's a lot of studies that show students who make kind of social connections at university or college tend to stay with their course and are less likely to drop out. So it's a good thing to do, kind of apart from just it being a good thing to do. It's like there is a kind of pedagogic reason for it as well, I think. So so go on.
No, you go ahead.
So that we covered that, and then we talked just about issues around student support, and helping them. So at the Open University, before students become students with us, we kind of have a lot of an open learn course, which is our OER repository, about how to be an OU student, which I think again is more difficult kind of at a distance. Students often have in their head, I guess, and we all do, a kind of stereotypical narrative about what it means to be a university student, sitting in a lecture hall, going to tutorial, sitting in the library, sitting on the quad or whatever. You kind of know what it means to be a university student. When you're studying at a distance. That
actually, for me, it was going to the pub, but
or the student union bar, whatever. It's like those kind of things. But when you're at a distance, that kind of narrative doesn't work anymore, and that sense of identity can break down. So you have to kind of help students learn how to be a student in this kind of new environment. So like things like setting up your study space, making it yours, agreeing with the family time that when you're studying, things that if the door says don't disturb, it says don't disturb. Don't ask me to go out or do things. So all those kind of things that you have to kind of do and be much more organised about your study time. So we went through some of that. We talked about assessment. I boldly, or perhaps not very boldly, prompted that, is this the end of exams? And I think because I think one of the things the pandemic has made us do is look at fragility in the higher ed system, which we've kind of been ignoring before. So I did a 5-minute GASTA talk the other night online. I was talking about how distance ed mirrors some of the attributes of the internet, the design of the internet, and kind of being distributed, decentralized, open, those kind of things. And that makes it a more robust system. And what the crisis has revealed are these points of weakness in the system, and exams is one of them. Suddenly, all of your learning comes down to this one day where you sit there. If that day can't happen, you haven't got a system to back it up, whereas more project-based approaches or continuous assessment, e-portfolio, whatever you are, kind of are more robust forms of assessment. So I'd be interested to see whether people do revert back to exams. And there is pressure on things like professional bodies want exams. They still think it's the only pure way to do kind of assessment and those kind of things.
Well, it's how they did it, Martin.
I know, exactly. It's like there is a lot of that. But I think what we'll see is a breakdown, like these things. Someone was saying the other day that it's going to be very tricky after this from people who've been putting in home working requests, and they've been told, no, you can't do your job at home. Or suddenly they have been doing their job at home. It's like, so afterwards, it's like, are they going to deny those home working requests? And I think they're kind of pedagogic equivalents to that. It's like, well, suddenly we could do this stuff online. So, telling me we can't again, it's like, so there'll be some of that. And just the last session was the kind of short term versus medium to longer term objectives. And we've said, I think from a student perspective, they're probably prepared to accept, Zoom in your classroom, in the short term, because you've had to change kind of overnight. By the time it gets to September, October, and a lot of unis here are talking about that first semester probably being online, they're going to want a more structured course, that's a bit more robust and a bit more sort of pedagogically thought through. And I'm not sure lots of universities have in place that kind of a learning design team, and at the Open University we have kind of these different teams that come together with different expertise to create a course. That's a very different thing from just here's my PowerPoint notes and I'm going to talk over them.
And where's my publisher exam questions?
So all that, so I think there's going to be quite a lot of work over the summer. We were talking about who's going to feel that stress, and I was saying I feel for a lot of the kind of ed tech or instructional design units who are suddenly for years having been booted around, like sometimes doing the computer, the IT support structure.
Then they're in the library. Then they're over there. Yeah.
They're kind of rootless, and whenever a new vice chancellor or principal comes in, they come up with a different thing for them. Suddenly they're kind of like the saviors of the university. So I think they're in for a busy summer. It's like
I posted a whinging tweet here yesterday and got an amazing response from people across the field who are all sort of whinging along with me that suddenly we just are being, we're getting a lot of attention that we don't normally get.
I was joking some of the days. Who would have thought EdTech would become an emergency service? You know, I want to have that bit where I come in on a helicopter hanging off those ramps. Come on, it's time for EdTech. You know?
Make sure you wear your mask.
Yeah, that's right. Flying in, the EdTech hit squad is here. So, yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Martin. That's fantastic. That's a really nice, I think,
cool
piece for people to see. I appreciate it. And for the rest of you, thank you very much. We're going to see you tomorrow. Take care, folks.